Heavens to Betsy, what a week, huh, sports fans? Holy Toledo. Yeah, so Moist Critical's in a big oopsie poopsie situation here. It reminds me of the time in Moonfall when K.C. Houseman sacrifices himself and dies of cringe to become the moon. Yeah, so, being serious now, since this has become such a big issue, I've been in a lot of drama recently. I'm in hot water and I'm biting on the fart bubbles that pop up in the bathtub here. It is a lot. So let's start with the most recent one today, my retirement. I didn't know I was retiring. That's news to me. I'm as shocked as all of you are. I had a ton of fun last night playing a game called Clickleding, which is basically like a cuckoldry simulator, but for clicking against like the Lorax in a hotel room. And I just did like an old school gameplay commentary video. I was bubbly, full of jubilation. I posted it today only to learn that I'm just a big old fucking liar. Liar, liar, plants for hire, I suppose. I apparently, and I didn't know this until I posted the video, everyone was under the impression that I was quitting the internet. So I started scratching at the hair on my chinny chin, wondering, when the fuck did that happen? Was I sleepwalking? Do I have somnambulism? Is this some kind of like, Fight Club situation? But instead of like Tyler Durden, I have fucking Charles Turden here that's just making wrong announcements. It turns out the patient zero behind all of this was a post Jackson made announcing that I would be leaving the podcasts, which is something I thought about periodically for quite a few months now, mainly because I started to recognize that I was becoming the very thing I'd make fun of with being chronically online. Like, I just was always online, and the podcasts were a big proponent of that, and I just kind of wanted to scale back the amount of time I spend online, and I kept Jackson in the loop the whole time here about where my head was at, and last week I told him, hey man, I think this is going to be where I hang up the jersey, you can put it in the rafters, throw it in the dumpster, but I think I'm just going to be, sailing off into the sunset here and just reducing the amount of stuff I do online. Which he completely understood, so he made the announcement just letting people know that, and then that got spun on Twitter and Reddit as Moist Critical's taking an indefinite hiatus and quitting the internet, fundamentally. Don't know when I'll be back. He's done with the internet because of all this controversy. Patooey on his grave. He's gone. When looking at the post, I don't even know where that's coming from. It's literally just talking about the podcast and me just stepping away. Like, it doesn't extend beyond that. I can't even wrap my tiny noodle around how anyone could perceive this as me being done with the internet entirely, but that's the story that they ran with, and that's what most people saw, not the actual post. So everyone thought I was quitting the internet, so I posted that video that I was really happy with because it just felt like an OG old school video that made me happy, and then bang! Just a flood of comments and dislikes all saying shit like, how could you fucking deceive us? I thought you quit, huh? What happened to leaving, huh? I just read this post on Twitter from an account that had a profile pic of titties photoshopped onto Thomas Edison that said you were done, and it had 50,000 likes, so I know it was true, and you're just a fucking liar. I can't even just peacefully walk away from some projects without it being a massive fucking reaction over actual nothing burger information. And trust me, no one has a palate more refined for nothing burgers than me. I have ranted about the stupidest shit of all time, but this was mind-boggling even for me. So to set the record straight, no, I'm not retiring, despite what the experts are telling you. All I did was walk away from a couple of projects. That's really it. Like, that's a pretty normal thing to do, especially when one of them I've been doing for, 8 years. I really didn't think it was that deep, especially not deep enough for how big of a story it's become with all of the wild narratives running around about the true reason that I stopped doing it. So let's get into that drama. I've talked about it on stream, I don't even know how many times at this point, but we'll just talk about all of it in this video here. So, when covering the Ava Tyson situation, I was attacked by a lot of people for not being quick enough. Even though I covered it within the first 6 hours, people were unsatisfied that I hadn't made a video within the first fucking 20 minutes of it dropping. And then when I did finally finish the full video covering all of it, it was another massive problem where now I only did it out of an obligation because people called me out, and then I also got accused of being a transphobe because I didn't use Ava Tyson's preferred pronouns, which were she, her. I didn't know that. I thought just calling Ava Tyson by her name was okay, and I had also heard when I went to the Mr. Beast thing, someone refer to Ava Tyson with they. So I was truly under the impression that that was okay. And for that, I was annihilated by a good chunk of Twitter. And then annihilated by another good chunk of Twitter because I called out Sneeko, who was the main proponent, about me covering for Mr. Beast to keep the collab alive. I wasn't talking about Ava Tyson because I wanted the Mr. Beast collab. And I talked about how absurd that statement was, especially given his history with fighting against the age of consent. He's been very vocal about how much he hates the age of consent, and so I talked about that briefly at the end of the video, which then changed the whole narrative for a lot of people, where I never talked about Ava Tyson and only talked about Sneeko. So it was a complete lose-lose, because if I didn't talk about what Sneeko was saying, I would have been called a coward for not addressing it and talking about, like, well, he was going to cover for Mr. Beast until Sneeko called him out. So, like, if I didn't do it, I would have been attacked. I did do it, still got attacked. It really was unwinnable. But from that spawned a conversation where I talked to Sneeko directly, because he was very upset that I was talking about how him rallying against the age of consent is pedophile arguments, like defending pedophilia. As I've said since the very beginning of this channel, I'm always willing to engage with people I disagree with, and I thought that maybe there was a chance I misunderstood what he was trying to say, even though it's still abhorrent. I thought, okay, maybe he's not actually trying to defend pedophilia, he's like some kind of pseudo-intellectual debate bro who's trying to say something else. So I was willing to hear him out on it, and I talked to him in DMs, and he said he doesn't believe in the age of consent, he believes in the age of marriage, can't assign a number to it, but said that when someone can legally drive, they should be able to marry at the same time, which is literally like a 15 or 16-year-old, because you get your permit at 15, your license at 16, and both are way too young to be marrying. That shit is completely unacceptable. It is downright disgusting. He then said that he was happy to discuss it in a call, which I said I was willing to hear him out on, and he said that he would do it later because he was outside doing an IRL stream in Turkey. So I was willing to hear him out, because again, if this is some kind of crazy misunderstanding, I'd like to know that, because it'd be really fucking scary for someone in his position with his level of influence to be actually advocating for adults marrying and fucking children. That's a huge problem. That's a big fucking problem. So if there was something that he was like trying to say but failing to do so, I was willing to at least hear it. And this is where the infamous debate came from, the debate that people are calling the debate of the century. I'm kidding, not a single soul on the planet said that. It's actually one of the most dogshit debates I think human beings have ever had. He eventually called me on Discord. I was under the impression this was just him and I talking. I had no idea this was going to be a debate. I thought he was going to try and explain himself like, hey, no, this isn't actually what I meant. This is what I'm trying to say. I thought this was a conversation between him and I, not this kind of debate show that he was putting on for his audience. There is nothing in our DMs that indicated that's where it was going. When I joined the call, he asked if I was going to record it, to which I said, I can if he wants me to, but I was also down to just talk. So I thought maybe he wanted it as a recording to like explain to people like, no, he's not actually a pedophile defender or advocating for that kind of thing. So I thought that is why he asked. I didn't know it was because it was being streamed. Especially because one of his last DMs was about how he's doing an outside IRL stream and he would call me after. To me that says when he's done streaming, that's when we'll talk, not as a part of his stream. I didn't know this was a debate nor a stream until about an hour and 40 into it, roughly somewhere in that ballpark. I am not a debater. I've never claimed to be one. I never want to be a debater. I've always said that I believe conversations are the most productive because debates always devolve into what side can score the most points by explaining their thought process, even if the position is wrong. Whereas a conversation is a very different thing to me. So I didn't even know that's what this was. So obviously, I was unprepared for a fucking debate. So I entered into the Thunderdome and we started talking. I made it clear that I found his statements on the age of consent and children marrying adults being fucking hideous. Absolutely revolting. And then he started arguing about, well, what is a child? We must define a child, you know, it's not actually being under 18, it's all a bunch of hooey. And I really think if you have to start arguing about, well, what technically is a child, you're already way too far gone. Like, that is so fucking weird. And in no uncertain terms, multiple times throughout the debate, Sneeko says that he is okay with people that are aged 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 marrying adults that are 18 or older.
We're talking globally. Let's just talk globally. Like, do you think it is okay for, I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore, anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
Even get back a little bit. Do you think there's not a problem with a child being with an adult?
Okay. We haven't even agreed upon what a child and an adult is. You keep saying that it's 18.
Under 18 is child.
And I'm
over 18
telling
is
you,
adult.
that's not even the definition of the word.
What is the number? There needs to be a number, or else you can do the same thing.
I just told you there's not a number.
Do you see why that's a problem?
No.
If there's no defined... So why can't a 12-year-old marry an 18-year-old?
Because most 12-year-olds haven't gone through puberty yet. And most 12-year-olds...
What if, as you just said, it changes. What if a 12-year-old went through puberty early, the parents consent, the 18-year-old and the parents consent? Can they do it?
Most likely that's not going to happen. You know why? Because Islamically, if
we're not talking most likely. Just say it.
If the families have consented, the kid is mature, the kid is ready. Why should I stop
At 12 years old. At 12 years old.
If the kid is physically mature, the parents consent, both parties are
A
happy.
12-year-old being physically mature.
If that's the only line that actually makes sense.
Again, I don't think a 14-year-old can ever be physically mature.
Even though they literally can. Even though puberty actually defines that, it's fine.
I don't believe so. I was 14 once. But I actually had a mustache when I was 14. Would you have looked at me and said I was physically mature enough to get married?
If you were physically mature, if you were mature, yes, I would. Okay.
Really? When I was 14.
Yeah. If you were 14 and you were ready to go and you met another 14-year-old, yes, I would.
No. We're talking adults. You keep going back to that.
That is adult.
I met...
I told you my definition. I told you the
14-year-old
definition.
adult.
The definition,
Okay.
if you went through puberty, you're an adult. That's the definition of adult. So yes, if you're an adult and you had a mustache, you're ready to get married, fine. Okay?
Unironically saying a 14-year-old adult, I think, would make most sensible people want to puke. There's so many instances of this, and a lot of the conversation was spent with him talking about, like, overseas age of consent, like talking about how Japan's age of consent was 13 for the longest time, this and that. But the whole thing was like pulling teeth, and it was fucking painful. And I think it's extremely alarming perspective to have. Unironically calling a 14-year-old and 12-year-old mature enough for a marriage, those are middle schoolers. Like, holy shit. I think that is extremely concerning to be advocating for something like that. Like, would Sneeko be okay if his best friend ended up marrying a 14-year-old? He certainly shouldn't be. No one should be okay with something like that. Like, that's fucking terrible. That is actually terrible. But now, since I wasn't, like, holding him to this topic or making sure it stayed on the topic I thought we were talking about, it went all over the place with a ton of different things, but the big one, and this is what most people have focused on, which was my response to his question about kids transitioning. And the way he would pose that question would be by asking if I thought it was okay if kids who want to switch their gender go to the doctor and get their dick cut off. Is it okay if a 9-year-old goes to a doctor and gets their cock cut off right then and there? And when posed with that question, I replied with yes. And I've talked about this on stream many, many times now, and I'll talk about it again here. I thought he was talking in hyperbole. I thought he was just exaggerating, being over the top, talking about the entire subject of transitioning. I had no idea that any living, breathing human being actually thought that that's how transitioning works, where you just go into a doctor saying, I feel like switching genders, and they lay you down on the operating table and just snip your whole fucking meat off. I didn't know that that's what he actually believed. I didn't know he was speaking literally. I thought he was just referring to the entire process of transitioning and just using this over-the-top statement to encapsulate all of it. Because you literally cannot get that surgery unless you are 18. Like, you actually have to go out of your way to be that stupid on the topic than you would just spending a couple of seconds looking it up. There are very rare cases where someone under 18 has had that surgery performed. That's not common. So I really didn't think that someone could be so dumb on the topic. I thought he was just speaking in hyperbole, which is my mistake. I should have been more clear instead of making an assumption that he was talking about something nuanced in an over-the-top way. I haven't hid this take, and it's not a new take from me. I've talked about this a couple times throughout the years on stream. I have no complaints if a kid gets interested in transitioning and starts talking to their family about it. So their parents start talking to doctors, the kid starts talking to doctors and therapists and all of this, because the process of transitioning is one that takes place over the course of many years. It's not something that just happens like that. And I'm also not afraid to admit that I am not the most educated when it comes to transitioning. I am not someone that has a ton of knowledge about the subject to be speaking on it in a really in-depth manner. But even I know these very surface level things that everyone has easy access to understand. It is a long process. And I have no problems at all if a kid gets interested in that process and starts going through that process with proper care. And then when they reach the age where they can consider that surgery and decide they want to do it, then that's all power to them. That's entirely up to them. They have reached that age. They can now do that surgery if they want to. That is not a surgery that's being offered to like a 9-year-old who just says, I feel like changing genders today. It's just not how it works. And I didn't think that that's what was actually being discussed because it's so fucking silly. Now, I'm sure there's some really fringe cases you can point to where that kind of thing did happen, but it's not common. Thus, I didn't think that's what was being referred to in the conversation. And it is, again, my mistake for not recognizing that at that moment, it was being spoken about literally. So all that shit that people keep dogpiling and spouting about me about how I want all kids to go out there and get their genitals chopped off is just fucked up. Like, it's so ridiculous. I recognize I did a horrible job of arguing in this debate, which isn't surprising considering I don't debate. This is not something that's in my skill set, which of course led to some embarrassingly dog shit arguments. Like the one I've seen people reference a couple times is when I briefly mentioned sports in this topic. It was a stupid point to try and make. I was getting hit by like some rebound psychic damage listening to some of the drivel brain rot that Sneako was spouting about the age of consent. And I don't know why I thought this was like an argument to try and make, but I brought up sports in this subject and I was going to try and elaborate on it, but didn't at all. What I was going to try and say is that when a kid gets interested in a sport, they'll talk to their parents about it, they'll research the sport, go through the process of learning about it. And when it comes to transitioning, it's still a process where you talk to your family about it, you learn about it. Like, it wasn't a point where I was trying to say, well, changing genders is a lot like picking between baseball and soccer. Like, that's not what I was trying to get at, but because I didn't elaborate on it and it really wasn't a good argument to try and make in the first place, that's one people have harped on a lot. And I get it. Like I said, I am not a debater. Like, I didn't go in here expecting a debate. So I had nothing prepared here for this inundation of outrageous questions and tangents. Like, there was a point where Sneako was trying to get me to say white power. Like, the whole thing was a fucking mess. It was, without a doubt, probably the worst debate that video has ever been cursed with. And I really regret not doing a better job here. It's not something I should have even done in the first place. I just have a tendency to really hope for the best out of people, and I was really hoping that I and most people were wrong about Sneako's perspective on the age of consent. However, unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be the case. He was very adamant about this position, and I did a terrible job in arguing with him, and I did a terrible job of articulating my beliefs. I am supportive of the LGBTQ+, and I have been, and that's not something I've been shy about. I just wish I did a better job of expressing that. To be open and honest here, and I've talked about this a lot, I've always treated my channel kind of like a diary for myself, which is why I just talk about so much different nonsense and so many things that I know a lot of people don't give a fuck about, but some of it's fun for me to talk about, or some of it's just things I care about. So being totally honest, I used to treat the internet as an escape from my dog shit real life. Truly unhappy, really hated most of everything about myself, and the internet was my escape from it. But now it's really become that real life is the escapism for me now. Like, I love posting and creating things, but I don't like interacting with the internet around me anymore. And it's something that I started to realize a couple months ago, and I've talked about it on stream a little bit, how because I've covered so many like drama stories and everything, it's pretty much all that I ever get told about when I'm streaming, and it's become such a massive headache, and it's just constant negativity that I'm fully flooded with, like at all hours. Like, I am in like this human centipede of eating someone's ass while having my ass eaten with even more things that I'm being demanded to like talk about, where everything just feels like a lose-lose, and it has been for like the last 6 or 8 months, I feel, where if I talk about something, it's a problem. Even if something is cut and dry, as like Cody Ko having sex with a 17-year-old being bad, I caught a lot of shit for that too. I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't see that, but man, the amount of emails I got and a lot of the things I was seeing, even something as cut and dry as that was an issue when I talked about it. And then if I don't talk about something, or if I don't talk about something fast enough in the time that some people think is appropriate, I'm then accused of covering up for something for an ulterior evil motive. So it just really feels like a rock and a hard place where, regardless, it's just going to be a massive flood of negativity. And a huge critique of me that I've always seen is Charlie's a fence sitter. He's just a fucking fence-sitting enlightened centrist cuck, this and that. And I've always said for the entire time I've been on the internet, I'm not special. I'm literally just a normal guy who got very lucky. I just sit here, joke about shit, talk about my opinion on things, and nothing else. I don't have a unique perspective on things. I don't have deep insight into the vicissitudes of certain things. I am literally just a guy who yaps, has some fun, talks about shit, does some wacky stuff as well, and that's it. It's just not that deep. But because everything is so inflammatory and charged online, it's being perceived in the last 2 years, it's really popped off, as me making deliberate attempts to appease both sides and play right down the middle to soak up as much as possible. Like it's all this like nefarious scheme where I'm doing this with my hands. And I just don't understand how it's become so incendiary, where that's apparently like a really bad thing now. My opinion is not special, and my opinion isn't one that's pandering to any sides or catering to anything. It's literally just whatever's up here. I sit down for like 30 to 45 minutes on like a topic or like a video that I'm joking around about, and I talk about it. I am legitimately just an average, well, below average height guy who's about to turn 30. I'm not just spitting hot takes out the wazoo here. I'm just being myself. That's all this channel ever has been. And now it's become super controversial to do that if it's not like, picking sides on everything, it seems. And it's very frustrating. For the longest time, it was just me having fun. And for the most part, it still is. But I've started to recognize over the last few months that some of the things I do just really aren't fun for me to do, and I've been doing them out of obligation. Mainly internet drama. When I initially started covering drama so many years ago now, it was fun, because it wasn't as serious. Like, the stories were a lot, more quirky. It was easy to get invested because it was kind of just like a soap opera, like a really dumb soap opera. But recently it's been much more serious, and I feel the need to talk about these things because a lot of them are extremely serious with very important topics to discuss. But it has become draining. As much as I never wanted to admit it, I've started to recognize that my mood is immediately impacted by whatever I read on Twitter in the morning. If that's some horrible stuff about a creator or what have you, it immediately affects my entire day and my whole outlook on the day. Now I know, call the wambulance, get some French fries, just fucking whining about having to talk about drama. What a stupid problem to be upset about. But I'm just trying to explain that it hasn't been as fun recently. It hasn't. And the main thing, if you've been around the channel for a while, is I've always wanted this to be fun and never feel like a job. And as hard as it is for me to admit this, a lot of this kind of stuff, it has just started to feel like less fun and more of, well, gotta do this because I'm expected to. Like, anytime I go live, most of chat is just telling me about the latest in whatever's happening in the creator space or some other, like, extremely negative thing going on. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to learn all about that once I turn stream off. So then I spend a few hours learning about these things, and it's all just really upsetting stuff. Like, it's not happy. It's all very sad, bad stuff. And it's been making me not happy. So I definitely think I'll be slowing down on covering internet-related drama or like drama in general. I'll still talk about like really wacky stories and shit like that, but I definitely think I'm gonna be pumping the brakes on like the kind of drama I have been covering recently. And instead, I'm going to go back to focusing on the content that I'm most happy with. Like, if you ask me what content I'm most proud of throughout my entire time on this platform for the last, 17, 18 years, none of it would be drama coverage. It'd be things like Skynut. It'd be things like shooting a potato at a tennis racket to see if you can make french fries in midair by frying them in hot oil. It's shit like that. And I think I'm going to go back to that kind of stuff as opposed to the direction that I have been going recently. So, yeah, this was a lot to go over here, but I hope this has cleared everything up. And, yeah, that's really about it. So, yeah.